How you say that? Something like that, like.
Okay, so we're going to call this regular meeting to order of the Rutherford Board of Education on January 27, 2020 at 7:30 p.m. We're going to ask everyone to please stand and face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, Mr. Kelly, if you can take the roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Present.
Mr. Conti? Mr. Healy?
Here.
Mrs. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Librera?
Here.
Mr. Mazzone?
Here.
Dr. Racine?
Here.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Here.
Dr. Olati?
Here.
You have a quorum.
The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of the Act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Regular meetings of the Rutherford Board of Education will be broadcast without editing during a 2-hour segment as limited by Comcast time constraints on Tuesday evenings at 8 p.m. on the Comcast Public Access Channel and on FiOS Channel 38. A video of the meeting can also be viewed on our website, www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. Any member of the public who wishes to view a DVD of the meeting can make that request in writing to the Board Secretary. So in your packets, you'll find meeting minutes for the regular meeting and executive session from January 6th, 2020. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Hearing none, going to ask Mr. Kelly to enter those into the record.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just going to make one change there. The minutes were actually called the minutes of a reorganization meeting, not a regular meeting, so that will be reflected on the minutes. Thank you.
Okay. So we are going to start with the report of the student representative.
Good evening, everyone, and Happy New Year. The last time I was here was before winter break, and a lot has happened since then. Today was the first day of the second semester, following a long week of benchmarks, and it's marking the beginning of new electives and classes for many students. All of our sports teams are doing a great job representing our town. The girls' basketball team was in the tournament this weekend, and they have a winning record. Well-known athlete Jenna Rogers broke another school record in winter track for an event that she isn't even being recruited for, shot put. Our swim team celebrated its senior night this week and participated in the county tournament this past weekend. Another student, Jason Alves, committed to Rutgers Newark for soccer, following 3 other student athletes, Jenna Rogers attending the University of Nebraska, CJ Francisco attending the University of the Sciences, and Jacob Gomez attending Old Dominion University. Today was the first meeting for spring sports, which will begin in early March as the winter sports season comes to a close. For seniors, we enter our final semester in the Rutherford School District and are passing many major milestones. Most college applications were due January 1st, now we must wait to hear back and make our commitments. I am proud to say that our valedictorian will be attending an Ivy League college, Brown, which reflects very strongly on the academic strength of the Rutherford School District. Moreover, next Wednesday is the Senior Fashion Show at the Venetian, which is the largest fundraiser for senior prom and other activities. We hope to raise enough money at the fashion show as well as all the other seniors to have fun that night with their peers. The academic decathlon competes in their big competition this weekend and hopes to win, illustrating the intelligence of Rutherford students. They celebrate their awards dinner here the same night as the fashion show. This past week, Rutherford High School Band hosted Band Day for the younger band students in the middle school to experience what the band program is like. The Health Careers Club and the GSA Club have sold bagels every Friday morning to raise money for their causes, one of which is raising money for a child to have a necessary surgery. The Student Council will be selling little teddy bear grams for Valentine's Day to raise money for the Student Council charity. The Heroes and Cool Kids Club attended their second training session with other members of the club throughout New Jersey and will be visiting Pierpont School on Wednesday to meet with the 6th graders again. Thank you all for your attention tonight and for listening to my update on what is happening at Rutherford High School and in the district. I hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for our student representative?
Good job.
How are you holding up as a senior?
Good. Waiting game, waiting to hear back from all my schools.
Where'd you play?
Everywhere.
So, being that I have a junior, do you have any advice, having gone through it?
Get started early. Don't procrastinate.
I just wanted to comment on a few things that were mentioned. The academic decathlon team competes this weekend, correct? In the regional, we've had a lot of success last decade. Twice winning the states, going on to the nationals, and advancing to the states almost every year. And again, I think for people who don't know or don't remember what that is a grueling day of competition in, are you a member? You're not a member of the team, are you?
No, I'm not a member, but-
Because I'd let you talk to it this way. Or I wanted to make sure you weren't going to fact check me if I say anything in this room. It's really a grueling day of math and history and literature and speech and this super quiz at the end, which is really a very cool, exciting. The gym gets filled and the team sit there and they have to answer questions. I judged for many years, and the judging just meant I had to, when they told us something was right, I added up the score, and it always really embarrassed me a little bit of how I would have done if I was taking part in the super quiz. It would not have been so super. So we really have had a lot of success with that program, and very proud of the hours these kids put in. And Mr. Narazny, the advisor, starting in August, and they work just like an athletic team does, several days a week, weekends to train, and they have to read things on their own for, hopefully more than one day of competition. So I'll certainly keep you all apprised of how we do, but every year we've done very, very well. And Band Day, every year we alternate. The high school does Band Day and Choir Day. We have a guest videographer here today, Mr. Fagno, filling for Mr. Met, and he's our music teacher here, head director at the high school. And the elementary and the middle school kids come up and work with the high school kids and put on a concert at the end of the day. So congratulations, Mike, on that and keeping that tradition going. So, an awful lot of things is going on. Almost too many to keep abreast of. And I just want to throw a few other student-related things here, because I know our student rep often has to leave allegedly for homework, right? We had two students from the high school whose works, Dana, and I think it's Serrera, is that how you say her, do you know her last name? Serrera and Brandon Freed. They were selected as winners by the Montclair Art Museum's Scholastic Art and Writing Awards. And it's a very prestigious award. About 30% of, there's over 3,500 works submitted, and about 30% get noted of that. So they're a very select group of people throughout the state. There's more information about that on the website. And I also want to mention that we had high school students, and we had middle school students, and then through the Scouts, elementary school students participate in the ceremony honoring Dr. King on Martin Luther King Day. Our students did an outstanding job. I was honored to be part of that ceremony and have a chance to speak, and that was a nice event. And again, a community-sponsored event that our students take part in on a day off, which I think is unique as well. And then, of course, Judge Jones and Judge Hurley and our MC and host, Ms. Librera, were at the Junior Women's Club Spelling Bee on Friday night. And again, we had, I think, close to 40 students from Pierpont participate on an outside school event. And that was a a good evening, and 3 of the students will advance on to the district spelling bee. So, in every aspect, our students and our teachers and our faculty are involved in things outside the classroom that I think really enhance the education of the program and the community's awareness of what our students and teachers are doing. So I want to thank all those people for being involved. Okay? Anything else?
Okay, well, thank you so much. Keep in touch, and if you have any of that alleged homework or studying to do, feel free to go attend to it.
Actually, it's calculus test.
Oh, calculus. Wow. All right, take it back. That's real. Okay.
Not making that up.
Yeah, not making that up.
I wish I was.
Yeah, yeah. Is this still the benchmarks
No, but we have,
test?
yeah, the AP classes do not take a
Yeah,
break.
never stops, right? Right.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Okay, so next we have the report of the superintendent with some
No.
special presentations.
Oh, yeah, we do. We're doing the presentations. My report is going to be mostly, there's presentations. And Mr. Robin Marone, who is here every year around this time to do our annual report of the audit from Bowman and Company. So, Bob, it's all yours.
Great, thank you. And no song and dance, though, right? It's just boring accountant information. But anyway, thank you again for allowing me to be here to talk to you tonight about the most recent audit. As most of you know me, I'm Bob Marone from Bowman and Company. I'm a partner with the firm. Congratulations to the 2 new board members, one that's here tonight, and Dr. Lottie for being president. That's very nice. So, and also to the district, congratulations on a successful referendum, and you got really great interest rates, which was really twofold. So, it's good for the district. We've been involved with my firm. We do get involved with a lot of financing, and we've had a lot of clients this past November, December who have gone to long-term financing, and you received one of the better rates, especially on a longer-term project. So kudos to the district. So just a few brief comments. Again, most of you are already aware of this, but there's 2 documents that you have. There's 2 books, one a bigger book and a smaller book. One is considered the audit report, but it's really titled the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report. That is in my audit report and opinion is included in that. And it's also, there's a section for management that can discuss highlights during the year, even accomplishments, as you mentioned, Mr. Hurley. That could also be put in there, the major accomplishments that occurred during the past fiscal year. And there's also some statistical data. The smaller piece is what's called a state auditor's management report. It's prescribed by the state of New Jersey, and Department of Education, so it conforms to that. And that's just the kind of easy report for the Department of Ed to look at, to see where your excess surplus is and to see if there's any administrative findings. So the state really looks at this more than they look at your CAFR, but your CAFR has a lot more financial information in it. So that's just a brief review as to the 2 documents that you've received. So during 17 and 18, when I was here last year, which was in February, the reports were delayed due to some delay by the state on getting information for the on-behalf pension information. Luckily, this year, they got that in early November, so we met the deadline, which was December 23rd. So if all things go well, it'll be back to the regular statutory deadline of December 5th. That never changes, but it can be unofficially extended when there's delays like this. So, so hopefully that will happen next year. That information that's needed is in what I call in the CAFR, the audit report, Exhibit A2, which is your statement of activities. So basically it's reporting on behalf revenue and on behalf expense that is required to be made by the state. But what is really being expensed is through your budget, and that would be in Exhibit C1. So that will be almost half of the report in would be your budgetary report. And quite honestly, that's your main focus as you concentrate now going into your budget process. This is really where the budget is reflected, and it's on Exhibit C1. So when you're looking at your report, you can see how your budget that was originally adopted is in there, and then adjustments are made, and then there's also certain revenues and expenditures that the state does pay on your behalf that are included on that, relating to pension and some health benefits. So just keep that in mind, that when you see your budget and you see things, there could be a little bit different than the budget that's being approved by you because of these changes that occur during the year by the state. So overall, the district revenues exceeded expenditures by over $800,000. However, the district did transfer $25,000 to the food service, and another $132,000 was from capital reserves over to the capital projects fund for, at that time, still some preliminary expenses related to the referendum. Total unassigned fund balance or surplus was $1.5 million, which was an increase of $176,000 from the year before. And you're still maintaining your capital reserve. That has a balance of $1.6 million, and that basically there's information in your footnote 3 that will tell the story about your capital reserve. As I mentioned about the board contribution, without that, the food service fund may have operated very close to the line, if not a little bit below break even. So I know in discussions with Mr. Kelly that it's an area that he's looking at this year to make sure that that doesn't happen. So you're really not supposed to have any fund that has a deficit in it. That's why there's a mechanism built in for the district to support the food service operations. Lastly, we unfortunately had one finding and recommendation this year, and it was relating to the financial records maintained for the Community Education Enterprise Fund, for which a corrective action plan is to be acted upon this evening. As I discussed with Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hurley, the financial reporting for the community ed program falls under the auspices of the board. Therefore, the record keeping and monthly activity is required to follow board guidelines. Overall, this enterprise fund is not reflective or indicative of the operation of the school district, which is really operating very well. So this is a small little piece, but because it falls under your auspices, it has to be included in the report. So now that it is, or not now that it is, but the fact that it is, then it has to conform to all board policies and guidelines, as well as the state of New Jersey and through the Department of Ed. So I believe your corrective action plan, I took a look at it prior to coming here, should fit the bill, but there should be some monitoring along the way to make sure that those procedures are being followed. And if that happens, then the finding would go away. So to me, it's easily corrected. The problem is, as Mr. Kelly knows, it's not all in his office at times, so therefore kind of have to bring it in and, you know, blame me, blame the auditor. I'm the one who's really requiring it because that's what the state is requiring, because it falls under your auspices. So.
Mr. Brown, just for the members of the board who may not remember, the adult school is what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Name was changed with the board's permission to the community school several months ago, half a year ago? Yeah. So that's what we're talking about.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is.
Just to make sure people are clear, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah, it's considered an enterprise fund, so your main focus, as I indicated before, was over your budget, which is in the C statement, C1. Then your special revenue funds, grants that you get from the Department of Ed or from the federal government, that's also followed. Capital projects, you follow through. Any debt service, these are your main governmental funds. Then there's enterprise funds, one of which would be the food service, and another one would be the adult school / community ed, I think summer enrichment as well. So these are ancillary areas that are in your report, but because they fall under your auspices, I have to report on them. And we just weren't really comfortable with everything that was going on with that during the past year. I know there was some transition of employment between the directors, but in the long run, I'm going to stand here and tell you that I don't see it having any serious effect on the district. It could get worse if not attended to, and we don't want that to happen. So that's the reason for the finding and the recommendation.
I was just going to say that, the Finance Committee did discuss this in detail, and I know we did feel comfortable with the plan that Mr. Kelly, Mr. Hurley talked about, and the plan that is put together. And I think that'll be a source of conversation, as we go through the year in terms of the Finance Committee and supporting Mr. Kelly and Mr. Hurley and making sure that that's something that could be rectified as we move into the rest of this year.
Yes, when I looked at it, the fact is, and everything falls to Mr. Kelly, but the fact that he'll be following it gives me assurances that it'll be taken care of.
Yeah, I want to take one moment, if I may, just to, well, first of all, thank Mr. Marone for his work, not only on the audit, but as we were going through the bonding process. He was one of a team of people that coordinated and worked with us and collaborated to make sure everything was going smoothly. And he congratulated us on getting the good rate, but it was work of him and the other advisors we had in our bond council that really helped guide us with that, and Mr. Kelly. Also, we would have had, I think, third year in a row of a perfectly clean audit. And I think in many districts, I sit, on the South Bergen Jointure and we had a clean audit this year, and all the other superintendents said, "Wow, that's unheard of." And we've had it for 2 years, and would have had it this year. As we know, the Dell School Community School operates as a kind of a separate entity under our umbrella, but we are addressing it. There was that change in leadership there that in the middle of the year on their part that I think caused a little more lack of cohesiveness. But when I look at 46 million or whatever the number is, the addition of the referendum money, which essentially doubles the budget, I do want to thank not only Mr. Kelly, mostly Mr. Kelly, but the principals and the supervisors and all those folks who manage the budget. Because if they don't get the things in a timely fashion, if they're not keeping accurate records, if they're not up on their reports, ultimately Joe, and to a lesser extent I, have to sit here and accept that. But it's a team effort led by Mr. Kelly. So I'm very pleased. We would like it to be perfectly clean, but we're going to work on getting that corrected, and I'm sure it will be.
Any questions or comments by members of the board?
Thank you again. We appreciate you coming every year and giving us a good report. And if we get bad, you'd have 9 resignations, so we better stay as good as we are. Thank you again.
Sure, anytime.
Joe, is there anything, I don't know, I did all the talking. You want to say
No,
anything?
thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you.
Bob's about to be their first-time grandfathers.
Oh, congratulations.
Twins.
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 Wow.
Identical.
First time and second time.
Little boy or little girl?
Both girls.
Very good.
That's the revenge. We had 4 boys, so therefore.
That switches, huh?
Yes.
Now you have to build the Barbie dream house.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
Good luck.
And thanks again for allowing me to be here. I appreciate it very much.
We appreciate
All right,
you.
Thank you.
Sure. Take
And
care.
of course, you're welcome to stay, but if you have any alleged homework or studying that you have to do,
You're good with numbers. You might be able to help Bridget with the calculus work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, right. You could be-
Too late, right? Well, thanks again. Thank you.
thank you, Ms. Murray.
We're going to update you all on where we're at with the facilities project. I'm going to let Mr. Kelly, guide through most of that material. I just want to preface it by saying that there's been a tremendous amount of work going on. Most of it, not visible or tangible work yet, but daily conferences, either by phone or in person, and plans to look at and things to sign and people to work with as we're moving forward. One of the things that I think will be important is to keep people informed as we go along, and that's kind of the purpose of what we're doing tonight. And I'll talk a little more after Mr. Kelly's done about some things in terms of down the road communication, getting out and things like that. Okay, so Mr. Kelly?
Thank you. On the financial side, we kind of talked about this before, but hopefully I can shed a little more light. We went out to bonds back in early December. Those funds were received on December 19th, so we do have $45 million sitting in the bank account right now. It's an account with BCB, just like all our other accounts are. It is interest-bearing, pays between 1.5 and 1.75%. For the period December 19th through December 31st, we did earn $25,000 in interest on that account, which goes back into the budget for the capital projects. So,
That's great.
so it's all good. I don't know what we would have gotten from our previous banking relationship, but it wouldn't have been that. So like I said, that is deposited into a dedicated account, and I've set up the procedures to reconcile that one separately. Normally that's Fund 30, our capital projects, and it's been small enough and it's been in the same bank account, so we just reconcile that all together. But I've broken that out so we can keep a better eye on that money and see where it's going and keep it reconciled by itself. Because when you reconcile a bank account that consists of numerous funds, things can often blend together. So just wanted to separate it and then look at that individually. So that is happening. The budget has been set up within the system so that we can spend the money, we can reconcile, we can encumber it, and we can spend it. We are already spending some. We've had to pay we've had to pay a bond counsel. Architects have been busy since September 25th or whatever date that was. So we are already paying it, but paying out of that account. So in fact, there are a number on tonight's bills list. There are a number of bills from Fund 30 that we're settling up. Also, we haven't much talked about it. I know we talked about it a while ago, but the New Jersey Department of Ed has been notified of the debt service obligation. We had to notify them by December so that they would have that information when they're figuring out the debt service aid for the 2020-21 year. Okay, so we met that deadline. So when we get the state aid numbers at the end of February, I fully expect to see the state share, that 40% share of our principal and interest obligation for next year. So that's all set up. So that's the finance side. Projects, I do have a timetable here I just wanted to share with you.
While Mr. Kelly's handling that out, I did send you all in your packet a timetable. And this is a synopsis or a summary of that. And again, as I'm sure Mr. Kelly will say, it is still very tentative. Okay? And I'll talk a little more later about when it's going to be less tentative. Okay? The start dates are getting less tentative. The finishing dates are always somewhat tentative, but we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But so that sheet that I gave you for each school, this is really a synopsis of what the most important parts are. So, Joe?
You'll see there are 7 projects here. These are the bid packages. This is actually how we're going to pursue these projects. So as you can see, the high school and Union School have been broken up into 2 separate bid packets due to the nature of the projects. Things like Pierpont is just one, so we would ultimately just get one contractor who will be responsible for seeing the whole thing through. So the accounting, everything's kind of set up as 7 projects. It obviously is the same work that was approved in the referendum. The first one up is the classroom addition at Lincoln. That is out to bid right now with a bid opening date of the 5th, which is next week. And then at the next board meeting on the 24th, we hopefully will be able to make a recommendation for the board to approve moving forward with the low bidder. It's important to note, and this is some very good news, is that the architects tell us that 22 contractors have come in to pick up the plans, which normally if you get 3 or 4 bidders, that's good.
That is
You can
good.
be happy with that. So even with 22, even if we get 11 or 12 bidders, that's fantastic.
What did he attribute that to?
I don't know, yeah, there's,
Everybody wants to work with me.
So right now in the construction market, I mean, everything we're doing, it is, you're getting that 10 plus on every project, in that 15 plus. We're
Yeah.
doing jobs over in New York are getting in that 20, 25 plus
Yeah.
range.
Good.
And most everything is coming in right now anywhere, and especially projects of this nature, coming in below that 5 to 8% margin. And this will probably, because it's education, will even go lower, you know, because people are just scared of 2021, and the construction industry reports are saying that, you know, the slowdown is going to hit later this year, so they're going to try and get the work, and a lot of these companies are going to buy the work, so, which is good news for us.
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
It's an attractive project too. I mean, it's 2 rooms. You know, it's not a long-term project.
Yeah, it's a quick turn.
So it's an attractive project.
Yeah, we're looking to begin construction on that as soon as school closes in June. And it is you said a quick turn, but it's still a 10-month project, so that'll take us through the winter. But fortunately, they should be able to do that without interrupting the school during the school year. So we're very excited to see what happens with that, and you'll get the results of that at the next board meeting. I mean, certainly we'll keep you posted before then, but you'll be asked hopefully to approve. Of course, we've all been in situations before where we have to throw out all the bids, and if there are 15, 20 of them, then that's very unlikely to happen. But just as we move through the process, that is a possibility that for one reason or another they all have to be thrown out. So.
Before you move to union?
Yeah.
Just, I'll throw in a couple of tidbits on each place about potential impact. Lincoln will not impact the school year. The work that would impact the existing building is going to get done in the summer. And then while school's in session, the interior work of the new classrooms will be getting done. There will be, appropriate size for, even though we don't have kindergarten, we do have pre-K in that building, we will put appropriate size bathrooms in those 2 classes so that if we ever have an overflow at the K Center and we have to move a kindergarten class somewhere, it can go there. It will impact, as I mentioned before, last month, the summer programs. The 3 or 4, that was Jumpstart, the Enrichment, and the Achievement at Lincoln, and extended school year will be moved to Washington this year because same size building, same setup. So we're just going to move it over there for 1 year so that there's no concern about the children being in the building this summer when some of the heavy lifting is going on to get the classroom ready.
Okay. Next up is the high school science lab renovation. We're going out to bid in early March. Kindergarten center, as you can see, that's 1 bid packet. We'll be going out in March also. And next week we'll be going out for the union floor abatement, which now looks to be over 2 years. I think there's still some question as to there'll be 2 years or 2 summers or 1 summer. The Mortimer wing, you can see that's going out in June, and obviously that's going to take several years. We still haven't determined if it's going to be 2 summers or 3 summers. We're doing a tour with the architects the week after next, I believe, to really get everybody on the same page, get everybody walking through the Mortimer wing and really make a decision, understand how we're going to address all the renovations that are needed.
But the design has not been chosen yet?
No,
It's not.
no. If I can, on the science labs in the high school, the idea is going to be to begin construction the last couple of weeks of the school year, where the high school students are on some half-days, exam schedules, seniors are getting ready for graduation, and we can move classes out, so we pick up some extra time. Most likely, it's going to extend into the first month of school, so we'll have to have some, flexibility in terms of scheduling to put students into other classrooms. There aren't many available classrooms, so it's going to be a challenge. We'll use space. We're working on that. We'll know better when the master schedule is completed, which is usually end of March, early April, believe it or not. And we'll be able, Mr. Morano will be able to look and see how he's going to, shuttle classes around for a short period of time. But hopefully, everything goes on schedule, and early October, we're back in there. As you recall, we're not picking up any additional classrooms at the high school, but we are going to design one of those science labs. They're all long rooms with a soffit that will allow down the road a drywall to go up to create 2 classrooms if we need to pick up classroom space, because that bubble that was at Pierpont is going to be at the high school in about 2 years or 3 years. So if we have to pick up a classroom, we could do that. There won't be many concerns with the older kids with the work going on in the science labs. Hallways are not being affected, so there won't be egress or things like that. Staying with the high school, the Mortimer project, we're not near the design part yet, but the thing that the walkthrough is particularly, they're going to do it in sections, right? So, here's a section of the single pane, right, window in there. So that section's coming out, right? And the new section's coming in. But it's not as simple as taking this out and dropping it in, because you're taking out the HVAC and you're putting in new HVAC, you're putting in new flooring. So we have to take a look if, since we don't have classes to move kids in, the architect's vision of a section, right, versus the school administrator's vision of a section, so that when there's that month that we have to move kids around, we're not taking out too many classes, right? So that's the walkthrough. Keep in mind you have stairwells, right? Major areas of egress. So we have to figure out the time frame of, how that's going to get done. So it's one thing to say these 6 classes are going to meet somewhere else, but we can't have that stairwell out of commission, right? We have offices. We have the STEM lab, right? Some things that you can't move. The weight room, cafeteria. I mean, there's areas. So this has been, as Joe could tell you, this has been the thing that I've been pressing the most, and our project manager and our team of architects are working very hard at coming up with what they see as a feasible plan, right? But I want to physically walk it with the high school principal and administrators and them, so we can say, is it feasible now in terms of the schedule? Which is why 2 summers, 3 summers, we're not sure yet. And that's another reason why, I don't want to come out and say this is end dates, because I don't want to project things that we're not going to be able to reach. But we'll have a better idea as we get into that March and April period. Nothing's happening with that this summer. Okay? That's going to get pushed. So the work here will be the science lab. And the union floors, as Mr. Kelly said, we're going to see. Maybe we could get the 10 of them done in one summer. Maybe we're going to have to split it over 2. That's part of what we're going back and forth with now. And that takes us up to?
Yeah, I realized I made a mistake here. Under the Mortimer wing, I am showing construction this summer, but that's not true.
What's that, Joe?
Awarding the contract in August, so.
It has the date 6/20 for
Okay.
beginning construction.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it should be 21, 22, and 23, is that correct?
You looking at Mortimer?
Beginning the construction.
Beginning construction, Mortimer should be 21, 22, and potentially
Yeah.
23, right?
Sorry about
So
that.
no work's happening on Mortimer this year.
Yeah.
Summer of 21, summer of 22, and
23 is
23 if we need it. And
So would the contract award date be 21 then?
yes, the contract award date.
No,
No, it'll be
it'll be
20 because they'll be awarded at the end of August so that they can get ready for the following summer.
A lot of lead time needed for steel and other materials.
And the other thing we're looking at in terms of this project is what work can be done to prep interior stuff with in the evening work, things like that. We're going to try everything we can to not to expedite the project, but to manage it so that we can be operating with our students in here while it's going on.
Are you putting anything in the contracts for like liquidated damages, for timelines, anything of that nature, or incentives if they do complete early? I know that's some of the things that I've seen.
I don't know if we can do that, but yeah, we certainly have the liquidated damages in it.
Okay, I figured there was liquidated damages.
Yeah.
We also, to go back to things in the contract, as you remember, the last, when we did all the preliminary environmental work and we found the area in the back field, right, that we had to remedy, we're going to put into the contract, we're going to put into the bid, right, we want to get in, that any contractor who's using this for a staging area is going to be responsible to give us a clean bill of health when they leave. Because we know we have one now.
Just want to point out too, the Pierpont project, if you look at those dates, that is really 2 consecutive years, 24 months, that extensive work will be going on, so. Beyond that, since the referendum at the end of September, as I know we've mentioned to you, since then, the architects get, they really jump right into it at that point, as does the construction manager. There's a lot of all the detailed work happens after the referendum, after a successful referendum. So what they had done before was really just schematics, just a very high-level drawing, get a sense of what we're talking about and what it might look like. That's what the state needs to approve it. Once the referendum passed, then they get into it. So surveys are done, the engineers are brought in, all sorts of testing is being done. The detailed architectural design is underway. A lot of consultations with myself and Mr. Hurley and the principals and supervisors, so we talk about what's needed in these spaces. For example, Danica Schmedding was very involved and active in the conversation about the science labs here as to what she wants to see in them, as was Mr. Morano. Also, the project manager, Bill Morris from EPIC, has been actively involved every step of the way. And as we discussed, when we hired him a couple of years ago, EPIC, their role was really to keep an eye out on the architects, watch what they're doing, challenge them, prepare cost estimates. But EPIC is the board's representative, so they are here to make sure that the board's interests are served. So they've been actively involved all along, and they have daily conversations with the architects to challenge them and to understand what they're pulling together.
Mr. Kelly, do they actually give you a detailed plan? Just as you're discussing all those individual events, do they provide that? Because what you're explaining, it's not just the construction, it's the other considerations. The use of the building.
Well, the use of the building, we work on with them, but we have to be very vocal on that.
Would they insert that into the plan?
Yeah, they'll be into the plan, things like when they can and can't do certain things, when they have to be out, days. Even while construction, for example, at Pierpont and Union, a great deal of the work there is going to go on during the school year. It's going to be continuous projects because you're going to construct the gyms, and then you're going to decommission the other gym, and there's going to be a covered walkway for kids to get to the new gym, right? While then the building in Union, when the addition, well, the addition will be there. Pierpont will be the covered walkway while they take down the other gym, build the new addition, right? So that work's going on. It's not going to be infringing like it is here at the high school on the day-to-day operation of the school, but it will be infringing on certain egress, right? There'll be days that we all have to learn to tolerate little noise, things of that nature. But there'll be some days where we're going to say you can't do certain activities on these days because state testing is going on, or you can't do certain activities on these days. And this is this is what I'm saying. It is, and I'm not saying this for any reason other than to be honest. It's daily, these conversations, and it involves the principals. It involves Mr. Paterno, our director of building and grounds. It involves it's daily as you're trying to get all this together and also try to come up with the what ifs.
And it's being developed.
Yes. Yeah. Which is why I say a lot of work going on right now, not as much tangible, because we're still progressing.
So would we be able to request like a Gantt chart, like a project timeline Gantt chart, which is typical in the industry? Like EPIC should be able to provide us one.
Yeah,
for building grounds. Like
yeah, we can get that. We can actually get that probably now. But the thing is, I want to be very cautious until we get to the right time. I'm thinking that March or April, which will lead me to the end with communications when we get there, is when we're going to be a little more confident. We're saying all this publicly, right? It's not like we're hiding anything. But before we put it in black and white or red and green or whatever color it's going to be and say this is it, I want to be a little more confident with all this planning going on. But yeah, all that stuff's going to be available.
Can the Pierpont floor in the gym be saved?
No.
Oh, so beautiful. Okay.
What is the plan for, I know we discussed this earlier in the process, Is the plan to stage the construction equipment on the field at the high school?
For the
And
high school, yes.
So what does that mean in terms of the availability of the field for gym and
This
for
summer,
activities?
it'll be, this year won't be that bad because you're doing basically a small project, 4 classrooms.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a small part of the field that will be used, as we did in the last construction, and with some kind of fencing
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, we'll then be able to use the field. Now, until we actually see how small it is, we'll make decisions in terms of safety,
Right.
how much of the field and who we're going to let on that field.
Right.
The Mortimer project, again, these will be summer projects, so I'm assuming that the field will be available. It might, it's in bad shape now, it's going to be in worse shape with all that stuff on it during the year. But in terms of summer use, Mortimer will probably require more staging, but still there should be a part of the field now available. But again, we also have to look at, and again, we're not there yet, right? We have to look at, if you're staging on the field, how do you get the stuff from where you're staging to where you're working?
Right.
So then, depending on how that path goes, will also determine what we do with the field. So ultimately, it's going to be a bigger interference in the summer than in the school year, although the field will not be in great shape, I'm sure. And it's going to depend on how much space they need and how confident we are and comfortable we are and how we get assurances of certain safeguards for summer use.
Right. So I was under the impression, maybe I was wrong, but I was under the impression that we also had to stage equipment on the high school field for the gym construction at Union and the gym construction at Pierpont.
All staging is being worked at the schools.
Excellent. Okay.
Now, some are going to be very challenging,
Yeah.
right? Because there's not a lot of space there. But part of EPIC's job is to figure out where they're going to stage.
Okay.
But everything is going to be, so no building will be impacted in theory, right? Other than for their project. Okay.
Thanks.
Sure. The architects are also working closely with the local construction officials, getting them early looks at the plans so that they can just raise their questions right now. In fact, we've sat in on a couple of meetings. One just last week, I sat in with Frank Reccanati, who's the building official, the construction official for Rutherford and a couple other neighboring towns. It's a shared service. And he had brought in the fire official, the electrical official, and the construction official. So there were 4 of them sitting there. So they're all getting a sense of what's in the plans, and they're developing their questions. So there's no surprises later on.
That's good.
So that's been happening, and thanks to the architects for really pursuing that.
Yeah, and that I think was a very positive thing because, again, you don't want surprises. And the surprise is, even though the DOE approves the plan and the local authority doesn't have as much authority, they are the ones that have to approve for occupancy. So if they see something that they want in there that's not there, it's much better to know about it now than to know about it on Labor Day, the day before school opens. Right? So we've had 2 meetings, I think, so far
Yes.
already with the local authorities and the architects.
And finally, the plans have to be submitted back to the New Jersey Department of Ed for their educational adequacy review. Not expecting an issue there because they got the preliminary plans a year ago, and they essentially approved everything, and nothing's really changed. So, but this all has to get done. This is a lot of paperwork and a lot of coordination on the parts of the architect primarily, but we're all actively involved. So there's a lot happening. To Mr. Hurley's point a couple minutes ago, there's a lot happening behind the scenes. And it seems to be coming together well. So,
I have a couple of other things I just want to add, and then if there's questions. The kindergarten center, as you see the timeline, to get the bathrooms done over the summer, and then the elevator work, the outside exterior work will all go on during the school year. That's, again, a critical one. That's next to that's even, I'm reminding them daily about that more than I am about Mortimer, because we have time in Mortimer. There's no room in the kindergarten center. We're not ready. And those of you that were on the board or had kids going to kindergarten, the year that it opened up 6 years ago as a full-day kindergarten, remember that we went down literally to the 0-hour Labor Day to get PSE&G to come and get the electricity on. And that was a lot of phone calls and a lot of favors and chips to cash in to get them to come in. So that's the one, again, being very honest, we have to really be sure of what we're doing. We have to be sure that we can, that we're going to project we're going to get done, that we can be done, because we have to have those classrooms ready for the opening day of school. So in terms of communication, we also are meeting with our communications consultant. Today, we had a good meeting with them and our IT department to talk about how we're going to attempt to expand our use and change our use a little bit of social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and be able to get more vivid and more compelling posts up so that everything isn't generated through the website where you have to link back to there. The IT folks are working on that. They have a couple of, they've come up with some new platforms we can use. We're going to bring our communication folks into a meeting with the administrators and some of our supervisors in March to go forward with, not just for referendum information, just for school information. And we also are working with our consultant. The One Rutherford website will be maintained, and that will be the place where we'll be putting out referendum facility information as it develops. If something really major comes up, we'll put something out to say, hey, go look at the website. But periodically, as the time is right, we'll be putting things out. We're looking at developing probably 2 borough-wide newsletters to mail to everybody in the borough, whether your kids are in school or not. One probably in May or June as we get into the beginning of construction, and one sometime in the fall as we complete the first summers, and summers are the big chunk of it. But again, those newsletters are not just going to be primers on facility. They're going to hopefully let folks know the good things that are going on in the schools as well. So we're developing a rather cautiously type, if that's the right word, or responsibly aggressive communication approach, where we're putting out stuff to people, the entire borough, not just the school people, using our website, using social media, using mailers, but also making sure that we're not just throwing stuff out there. We want to make sure that the timing is right to communicate. So that's kind of where we're at right now. A lot going on, like I said, and then very quickly, as you look at this timeline, you're going to see in packets, awarding a bid, awarding a bid, awarding a bid as we're going forward, so that we get things going in May and June. So if anyone has any questions for Mr. Kelly or for me?
And we, I noticed on the deadline here, it's already said 60% of the drawing set, the 15th. Has that been met?
All the deadlines that had to be met have been met, yeah. And those are drawings, those, as Mr. Kelly said, are the drawings now that you bid on, that go down to DOE, and they go out to bid. Yep. Anything else?
Who actually vets the bids? In other words, 20 bids come in, do you work with the architects or just to know
Architects,
that?
project managers,
You
Mr.
do?
Kelly, me.
Yeah.
But it is the lowest bid. But then we do some vetting to see if there's reasons why, if they don't meet the requirements of the bid, we have to reject.
Is it union or is it prevailing wage?
Prevailing wage.
Prevailing wage.
Okay?
And yes, the architects will be actively involved in reviewing the qualifications and the bid packages. So.
And one other comment, because, we both, Mr. Kelly and I have both been saying architects. Rachel Tiedemann is the lead architect. I'm going to ask Rachel if she would come maybe again. We're going to do periodic presentations like this to the board where we devote significant, it might be meetings where every meeting I'm saying something, but a more substantial presentation as when they're warranted, because not only then are we presenting it to the board, but we're presenting to whatever public's here and whatever public watches the video, right? So I'm going to ask Rachel if she would come to maybe in the spring, March, April, to do that presentation. So you also get to meet her. You've met Mr. Chapin and other folks, but you haven't met her. She's the lead architect. Mr. Chapin is working as an advisory and architect as part of the team. Mr. Carton, John Carton, who's a principal of PSA, is also on the team. And then there is an architect, in addition to those three, that's been assigned to every building. So that there's someone working on Pierpont with Rachel, with Kellen. So it really is a team approach. It's not, one person, or it's really a team. And as you recall, when we switched over when this idea of going forward with a referendum and a facility was, coming together several years ago, we talked about moving to a bigger firm like PSA, so that you have this advantage of a team approach with layers of workers. And then, of course, Epic, once we're getting close to the point where we'll get, Bill Morris oversees everything, but we'll be getting project managers then that will be hired to be on site. I think we have 2 of those, right? Two of those, in addition to Bill. So, and then, of course, we have our own, Mr. Paterno, and we have, the building, the principals are invited to all the project meetings. So we have a lot of eyes on what's going on.
So just to make a comment or two. So first I wanted to say thank you for doing this presentation and kicking this off, and for taking the time to do that with the whole board. That was sort of a comment I wanted to make to everyone, is that in our board self-evaluation, one of the things it asked all of us to identify is, do we work as a board of a whole, or do we work in specific committees? And oftentimes we do work in specific committees. Given that the facilities projects are as important as they are, I do think that, some of the issues around the triple constraint of, scope, schedule, cost may come up in buildings and grounds every now and then, when there's strategic decisions that have to be made, communication, timeline like that. I could see that being a role where strategic planning would talk about that. But in terms of the thorough conversations, one of the things I'm going to talk about in my report that sort of came up from the board self-evaluation is really about the information sharing and funneling. And when you work in specific committees, you have a certain group of people who have more information. And given the extent of these facility projects, having this be this kind of format where we're working partially as a board as a whole to discuss this, I think it's good for the public, and it's also good for all of us to be able to engage and feel like we're up to date and part of the same conversation.
That's excellent. That's excellent. And I think it's really important for the community to hear it too.
Well, yeah, Dr. Alati and I, and Mr. Kelly and I have had conversations about this, and he's right. Dr. Alati's right that there will be times that certain aspects of this are better suited in committee structure. It could be any number. It could be finance, could be building and grounds, it could be strategic planning. There may be things, part of the beauty of a committee is that it can be a think tank of sorts, or you kick around it, there could be a potential problem that we want to discuss, and a recommendation that our project manager may make, or Joe may make, or I may make, to say, this is how I think we should go forward to solve the problem. And that's probably better served in committee, and then the committee reports how we kicked it around and why we came up with the solution. But I think, hopefully we don't have a lot of problems. And I think the committee of a whole approach with the facilities not only keeps everybody, nothing gets lost in translation. It isn't the writer of the minutes, Mr. Kelly writes the minutes, whoever the chair is, reads the minutes. Something's always lost in translation. I think this is a way, and then also to include the community. People see the agenda published. If they want to come and hear what we're talking about, they come. If they want to click on the computer the next day and see what we talked about, it's there. So I think that's a good approach. This will be with us, as you see, we could be looking at 2023. So there's going to be a lot of updates and a lot of discussion, and there'll be a lot of different venues for where that discussion takes place. And what I'm going to try to do, and Mr. Kelly's going to try to do, is keep people informed, but also make sure that we're having the discussion at the right time, right venue. Okay, so that we're giving factual information, and people are hearing factual information. Okay, so can I move on to the next item of my rather long presentation? The state wants us to report every year data going back to last year's graduation, and I'm just going to read you some numbers and explain what they are. And if anybody wants to see these, I can forward them to you. But this is not about how many students graduate. You got that report already. This has to do with the state assessments, New Jersey's learning standards assessments that are given. It used to be PARC. Okay. So last year, class of 2019, we had 213 graduates. Now, I know that's more than you probably saw walk across the stage, because this also includes out-of-district students. When it comes to state testing, as we talk about when I give you the report of student achievement, it's not only the students in our building that count, but students that we send out of district. We had 34 students in language arts and 27 students in math, of that 213 number, who took a substitute competency test to count as passing the state assessment. So that means you could use your SAT score, you could use the military test, the armed forces test. You could take, there's other tests that you could take if you choose either not to take the state assessment, because we have these opt-outs, right? Or you take it and you don't pass it, okay? We had 6 students in language arts and 15 students in math, again, out of that 213, who achieved the state assessment by going through a portfolio. And the portfolio is set up for students who do not pass the test. They then have to work with Dr. Hopkins and the department supervisor, whether it be Mr. Ursulisi or Ms. Schmenning, over a series of a portfolio-based work, right? Where they work in that, whether it's math or language arts together. The portfolio gets reviewed on the local level, then gets sent down to the state level, and is either accepted or not. So we had students pass that way. We had 10 students in language arts, 16 in math, satisfied the test requirement through their IEPs, which in their IEP, it says they either don't have to take the test or they have to take it and not pass it. Just for your own knowledge, the great majority of those, virtually 100% of those, are students who are out of district. The only students in our building, in our program, that do not have to sit for the exam are students in the MD program. Okay? But all of our other students in district, special ed students, have to sit for the exam. It has to do with a percentage. You have to show the percentage of the prescribed curriculum from the state the students being exposed to in their program. And there was only one student who was denied graduation from that class of the 213. So the 212 graduated. And none of the students, that student did not did pass the assessment. He didn't graduate because he failed the assessment. He didn't graduate, or she, because they didn't meet some other criteria in terms of passing courses or things like that. And if you go back to what I've been saying for a number of years, when you see the graduation percentage, 92%, 93%, and you say, wait a minute, you may not be a math major, but if you got 212 out of 213, that sounds more like 99% or something like that to me, right? But remember what I told you, they changed the rules several years ago to cohorts, and it has to do with not who is a senior, but who was a freshman 4 years before, and how well, Mr. Sprayberry, so you haven't heard this litany of me for a while. It was set up under the previous governor's administration, along with things like Park and other stuff, and I think there was an agenda there. Because students who get detained because they need remediation, get detained because they don't come to school and they are not in attendance, leave because maybe school's not for them and they're going to go for a GED. It's all valid reasons why some kids may not go. You could start senior year with 200 kids and 200 graduated, but if you start your freshman year with 210, your percentage is down. And on the other hand, if you don't hold the attendance policy strictly, and if you don't hold grades and credit strictly, you get criticized for that. So you see, so I just want you to keep in mind, that's why, I don't give you this report because it's not ready when we do the achievement report, but I always say to you, don't be fooled by 94%. And that's not what our senior graduation rate in terms of students sitting here on day one senior year. So that's the report. I had to share it with you, and I did. If anybody wants to see those numbers or whatever, I can always send them to you. But most of our students, not only do they graduate, but the great majority do well on the state assessment. And I wanted to throw out one little bit of information, too. It doesn't pertain necessarily to Rutherford, but we're part of it. But this is, Education Week, which is a very well-known educational journal, and every year they rank all the schools based on their criteria in the states in the country, public education. And once again, New Jersey is number 2, right behind Massachusetts. And New Jersey leads the nation in the percentage of students who are graduating on time. So, we're a part of that, and I think we should be proud of the schools here in New Jersey and what we're all doing. A couple of other quick comments. I already mentioned about the weekend, Martin Luther King Day, and the spelling bee and all that, and just going through my own notes. And registration has started for pre-K and kindergarten, and the calls and the people coming in as they usually do, and fast and furious. So we're getting a lot of enrollment in this past week. I did put in the communication about committee meetings. I'll just review those quickly with you. I don't know if Dr. Alati's going to. If I apologize, you'll get used to me stepping on your lines. The 3rd, next Monday, Finance Committee at 7 o'clock. The 10th, Curriculum and Instruction at 6:30. It'll be a one-topic meeting, which I'll talk about a little bit later. Building and Grounds at 7 o'clock with a look at some of the things that may be going into the budget. And Strategic Planning and Communication at 7:30, which I think will be more of a meeting to kind of set an agenda, right, as we go forward. Both Dr. Alani and I will be sharing some ideas we have about setting an agenda. So that meeting will be a good brainstorm type of meeting. Policy does not need to meet. We're still waiting for an update from Strauss Esme. Personnel can meet prior to the February 24th meeting. Again, with a look ahead towards the budget to share with Building and Grounds and share with personnel some projections perhaps for things that might impact the budget. Okay? So again, they're here. We'll send out reminders and agendas electronically ahead of the meetings. Okay? And I think that's it. There's plenty, right?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurley. So next we have the report of the president. It's my first actual report, but I had a little time to think about what I wanted to say. So first off, some housekeeping and acknowledgments. So everyone should have received their assignments for the committees they're on and their liaison assignments. So I want to thank in advance everyone and appreciate your willingness to step up. Some of you are continuing to chair committees, and Ms. Ahmed, thank you for continuing with personnel to chair that. Ms. Jones, thank you for continuing with curriculum instruction. And Dr. Racine, thank you for continuing with finance. Mr. Healy, thank you for moving into the chairing Building and Grounds. It's going to be great to have your expertise there. Ms. Librera, thank you for stepping into policy and chairing that. And Mr. Mazzone, thank you for stepping into strategic planning and communication. And Mr. Conti is not here tonight, and Mr. Sprayberry, as you become more familiar, going to expect a lot of leadership and stepping up moving forward. So just a reminder in terms of the liaison jobs, so these are opportunities for us to increase our visibility, right, into the community. So whether it's schools or wherever it is that we're going, it's really important that everyone really take those liaison assignments seriously. And if you can't go to your liaison assignment, ask someone else. Let me know, and we'll get someone else to go. One thing I was going to possibly talk to Mr. Hurley about is, as we're engaging in the facility projects, I think having some talking points that are shared talking points for all of us as we're going to different schools, so there's a consistency of things that we're mentioning and we're hitting all those key areas will be important. So thinking a little bit about that. One thing that I know I appreciate that Mr. McLean has done in the past is at the next meeting or so, I'd like to bring a sign-up sheet. So there's a lot of events that go on with all the schools in the district. And as the president, I think I was looking through all of them recently, and it was a little overwhelming. And so I'm going to ask for everyone's help because I think collectively it's really important that we be a presence at all these events. It's another opportunity. Not just to be able to be a presence, but to be able to celebrate all the great things that are going on. So I'm going to bring like a sign-up sheet, and if people want to sign up at that point for things that they think that they could attend, you may not know your calendar in May or June, and we're all really busy, but if we can start signing up for some of those things and just sort of spread that out a little bit. And wanted to thank Ms. Jones, who's going to continue service as our Bergen County School Boards Association delegate, and Mr. Healy is NJSBA delegate. And I'm as guilty of this as everyone else, but I would like to put a plug in that it's really important that we try to attend these meetings. And we learn a lot of good information at these. So, please let me know as these things come up, and let the reps know if you're able to come, because those things are important. There's also some great professional development through there. I went to PD a couple years ago on bargaining units and negotiations, and it was great. Learned a lot there. So at the last board meeting, Mr. McLean made some public comments as the departing president, and one of the things he said is about this concept of the board being time to transition from good to great. And I don't know if he was being facetious or he knew that I was a bit of an overachiever. But I did want to let you know that I had an extensive conversation recently with Mr. Matt Lee, who's our Bergen County rep for NJSBA, to talk a little bit about our board self-evaluation. He's going to be coming at the next board meeting, February 24th, I believe. But I wanted to highlight some things from the board self-evaluation, and also I wanted to quickly highlight some things Mr. Lee and I talked about that we thought were good ideas, because I asked Mr. Lee what his style is when he presents. So he likes to talk minimally and likes the board to ask questions. So he's going to give an overview, but it's really about the questions you ask. So things I'm going to share hopefully will spark some thinking, so you can start to think about questions you may want to ask. So the first thing is I sort of delved deeply into the board's self-eval to look at, where are the bright spots and what are some suggestions of things that you all brought up or areas we can work on as a board. And I guess the prologue to all of it is that the results were really exceptional. Mr. Lee feels that this is a very strong board and something we should be really proud of. Where there were minor bar graph discrepancies or things of note, they were very small and minor in the scope of what he sees in schools. So his overall sentiment was that this is a very strong board, a lot of great stuff going on. So some themes that I saw that emerged, three things in particular. One was sort of that feedback loop and communication and how we all stay informed about everything going on. The second is our role as a board in setting goals and setting policies versus approving goals and approving policies, and what is, our role and where does that fall, in terms of board members, superintendent, and those aspects. And then some training and exposure to certain topics that people brought up. So Mr. Lee and I sort of brainstormed, and I wanted to throw out some suggestions for people to think about. The first is, I think in addressing some of the training and exposure, one of the things I think is really important is cross-training. And this idea that we don't want to stay stagnant, we always want to be keeping informed about everything that's going on. So obviously, you read the meeting minutes, the chair of the committee will give a report. But one of the things, two suggestions that I have for everyone to think about. The first is, if someone can't come to one of the committee meetings, invite someone else. Because as long as we have those 4 people, it gives people exposure to something they may not otherwise do. And the second, which is more of a challenge that I want people to think about, is this concept of when we think about every year being on a committee, think about the idea of challenging yourself to pick one new committee maybe you want to serve on each year. So this year it actually worked out where almost everyone went on to a different committee, at least one. Now, stability is really important with each committee, and you want to have that consistency. But I also think this idea of saying, what's one committee that I'd like to learn more about? Because some of what were comments were about how can I develop myself and understand financials, financial reports. Well, if you haven't been on the finance committee, maybe that would be a good committee to be on. So just thinking about that as an opportunity to not just stay on the same committee each year, but maybe one committee a change, because everyone's got 2 or 3 committee assignments. The second was really about board policy, and this idea, obviously with Strauss-Esme, we're not necessarily setting policy, we are approving them and we're evaluating. But one of the things that we talked about is that the most important thing about policies is not knowing all the policies, because that's basically impossible, but it's knowing how to get access to the policies, right? And how can I find out the information that I need? So being a former camp director, one idea I had was maybe at a couple of future meetings, you can sort of throw out a scenario of something that could come up and have everyone see who can buzz in first with, this is where I could find that board policy, or this is related to that board policy, just to give us a little insight toward these, because there are a lot of them, and it feels like some people mention that as something they'd like to continue to work on, is really understanding and making sure they're familiar with all our board policies. The other aspect is really thinking about the onboarding aspect, and with Mr. Sprayberry and Mr. Conti, and a few years ago when I joined, I know that Mr. Hurley and Mr. Kelly do a great job of doing an orientation, and you get level of information. But in the first few months, everything you're doing, I know myself going back to my beginnings, can feel a little overwhelming. So one of my goals is always engagement, and everyone feeling engaged. So one thought is to start sort of a mentor program moving forward. And the idea would basically be that each new board member would be assigned a board member, and that's your go-to. There's nothing formal you have to do, but as opposed to just going to Mr. Hurley all the time, or maybe going to the president, you go to your mentor. And so just as that concept or idea, so if anyone, I know Mr. Sprayberry and Mr. Conti are already into their time, but if you, anyone's interested in mentoring, let me know. And then, obviously when we talk about goals, so district goals are obviously ones, and superintendent goals that the superintendent is going to really be creating and understanding from the work obviously he's doing with the principals. During the year, Mr. Hurley's giving updates to where he feels the district and the superintendent goals are in progress. But one comment was about board goals, and one concept or idea to really think about is how we set and discuss board goals. So one idea is obviously we should be using the board self-evaluation to say, okay, from this, what goals can we set for ourselves for the next year? But also thinking that strategic planning is a good place to maybe have that committee work together on helping to develop what some of our board goals are. And then presenting those, and then being a sort of board as a whole discussion, so that everyone feels engaged with co-creating what these board goals are each year that we're evaluating. Because if I asked you right now, what are our board goals for this year? It's, you got to think about it for a minute. So want to think about that as well. And that was really it. So just a couple thoughts that came from there. That evaluation. Again, I thought it was really strong, and I'll just leave it there because I know I've had a couple of long reports, but wanted to take any questions, comments, reactions to anything I've mentioned. Ms. Ahmed.
I think it's a great idea because when you first come on the board, it's very hard, it's intimidating to, understand the people that you're sitting with and who to ask questions to. So if anyone wants to use me, I'm here. I know we all campaigned, it seems, together, so we kind of know each other, but if there's anyone that, would like information or just to find out a date or something, if I don't know it, I'll find it for you. And
Thank you, Scott. I think you'll find I'm not afraid to ask questions, and it's not a weakness of mine. So, but everybody here has been tremendous so far. So, thank you.
And you might think about it if you can to go to the New Jersey School Board's training. They do a wonderful orientation for new board members.
Mr. Kelly had sent a link to Chris and I, a podcast at the beginning of it when we were running, and I had sit through. I was about an hour, 2 hours, so I sat in my truck and listened to it and everything, and all the ethical stuff and everything went through it. So it was a good just insight into New Jersey and the board and stuff like that. But really, when you sit there and listen to it, I think what I got out of it was there's a lot of dirty stuff going on in other places. You heard like some of the stuff they were talking about. I'm like, you don't see that here, So that was it was a relief, and you know, it was also eye-opening to understand. I got a friend of mine that's on the board down in South Jersey, and I talked to him, and the stuff they deal with, it's in Berkeley Township, and I'm just so it's you don't see that.
Just to add to that, you heard Matt Lee say that we're a good board. You've heard we are a good board. In the years that I've gone to a lot of Bergen County boards and through New Jersey school boards taking additional training, you really hear some really awful boards and some situations that would never happen here. So you're probably right, but I'm still saying that they do a good job, and if you can make some of those,
Absolutely.
you know, the orientation, the actual one is a Friday night to Saturday, so it's a little bit, you know, part of a weekend, but it's very, very good.
Okay, so
Okay, I have completely forgot to mention, I made the phrase self-apparent. I left you all, we took the Parent Academy flyer that we put out in September, October, and we just put it out for the new year with the programs planned for the remainder of this year. So it's online. I think it got blasted out through our Connect 5, but I gave you a copy of it. So these programs are, like I said, have been very successful so far, and that just updates you on the ones that are still to come. Okay. Failed to mention that.
Okay, so at 8:49 PM, we are going to open the meeting to the public for any public comment related to agenda items. Hearing none. At 8:50, we're going to close the meeting. So we're going to move over to new business where there's action to be taken. I'll ask Ms. Ahmed to take us through personnel.
Surely, we have 22 motions today to look over for the board's approval. One, Ann Hetzel, she's retiring from Washington School. Two, Margaret Smith, to accept her resignation or retirement from Pierpont School. One, Moran, to approve a part-time teacher assistant in Washington School. Number 4, Kathy Arnold, to approve her as a wall monitor. 5, Yvonne Perez, a part-time bus driver for Rutherford School District. And number 6, to rescind the motion for Mr. Mencepo as a part-time bus driver and put him on number 7, substitute bus driver. He's becoming a substitute bus driver, Johnny Mencepo. So that was like a correction from the last meeting. 8, Ryan Guglielmotti, intermittent leave, absence for Family Leave Act for a special ed teacher at Pierpont. Alicia Skelza, to extend her unpaid child rearing leave of absence. 10, Maria Valente, to approve her as a long-term substitute elementary teacher at Lincoln. 11, Judens Gombert, for a coach, a strength and conditioning coach for the winter and spring seasons, to approve him. 12, Title I instructions. Now, this is a little, to approve Albina Semyonova for a supplementary after-school Title I program at Pierpont School. 13, Title I program curriculum. To approve 4 in-district teachers to work on the curriculum: Vanessa Campolo, Alexandra Dimitriadis, and Jennifer Kessler, Paula Rizzoli. 14, coordinator summer elementary programs, and that would be for Darlene Monticello for that position. 15, substitute teachers. Following substitute teachers: Jason Thorne, Victoria Minnick, Maria Picasso, Daniel Gonzalez for the 2019-20 school year. Also substitute teacher assistants: Jason Thorne, and number 16, Jason Thorne, Victoria Minnick, Maria Krekos, and Daniel Gonzalez. 17, junior practicum to approve students from Felician University and Rutherford School District on Tuesdays from February 3rd through May 1st. And that's as listed. Now 18, Shira Engelbert is really the name that should be in the motion, to approve Shira Engelbert from Kane University for practical experience. She wanted her name to be Shira Engelbert instead of Shira Van. So, got that one?
Yeah.
Okay. 19, Elisa McGee. to approve her for Fordham University for clinical practicum internship experience with Maureen Trapiccio. 20 minimum wage, to increase the hourly wage because of the state requirement. It's $11 for positions as follows. And then substitute teacher assistants, substitute bus assistants, and lunch monitors to increase it to $11 per hour. 21, also minimum wage and increase for $11 for lunch monitors, and they're all listed. 22, travel reimbursements for the following: Anthony Paterno, J. Fagenbaum, Judith D. Pasquale, Gina Valecchio, and Kurt Schweitzer. So with the board's approval, I'd like a motion to approve personnel issues 1 through 22.
Okay, good to motion. Can I get a second? Mr. Healy. Comments, questions?
If I could make just a couple of quick comments, again, to recognize Ms. Hetzel and Ms. Smith, thank them for their retirement. Again, they'll be here, there'll be more opportunity to do this till the end of the year, but acknowledge their service to the district. A reminder that Title I instructors are paid through Title I money, not through board's money. When you see that rate of pay that's established through the Title I grant, I'd just like to remind you of that. The summer programs are the Jump Start and the Enrichment and the Achievement. We're preparing for those now. So that's the curriculum writing, and also the person will direct the program in the summer like she did last year. And the minimum wage law affects a few of our employees, not many, but they got bumped up due to the change in the law. Okay.
Just one comment.
Ms. Jones?
And what will Washington School do without Ann Hetzel, who dresses up as the turkey every year?
I did ask her that question.
She does a wonderful
And
job with that.
she does a great job, sounds like a turkey. She does a great job, she looks like a turkey. I asked her, and I think she thought I would take over the job, but that's not going to be me. So the job is there, Ms. Jones. You know, if you want to see if the costume fits, the job, you could tease it.
Any other comments? Hearing none, can I ask Mr. Kelly to take roll?
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Awadi?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, next we have curriculum and instruction. Ms. Jones?
Certainly. There are 6 resolutions for board member consideration under curriculum instruction. Resolution 1, out-of-district placements, which there are 2. Field trips, now totaling 115 for issue resolution number 2. 3, home instruction for 4 students. Resolution 4 is an overnight trip for the SCCLA Spring Leadership Conference on March 19th to March 20th, with the sponsor Geraldine Howard. And resolutions 5 and 6 need affirmation of the superintendent's decision in 2 HIV investigations. Unless Mr. Hurley would like to do one more year about the overnight trip and explain that maybe to some board members.
Every year we have students who qualify. It's family, it's Future Consumer Career Leaders Association. Students are in our family consumer science courses, this every year we've had students qualify, and then we've had some qualify for the nationals. I'm not sure if the qualification round has happened yet. I don't think it has, but the trip's approved, just like we did with some of the athletic ones. In the event we get students to qualify, overnight trips have to be approved by the board. Okay?
Other comments, questions? Okay, can I have a motion?
I move
Oh.
resolutions 1 through 6.
Okay, second? Ms. Lebrera? Any other comments? Okay, Mr. Kelly, take roll.
Mrs. Ahmed?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Lebrera?
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Awadi?
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, next we have finance. Dr. Racine.
Well, finance, we had a finance meeting on the 15th of January, and luckily the report could be quick because everything we talked about in the committee meeting we talked about tonight. It was the audit report, the budget developments, and the bond construction. So thank you very much for Our next meeting is on the 3rd at 7 p.m. And that should be one of substance, I believe.
Should be what?
One of substance. We go through the proposals.
Aren't they all?
Yeah.
You're putting pressure on now. We have to get subsidy.
And normally very
Joey, they get to work on that.
Yeah. All right. So we have seven motions. Okay. One is the approval of bills. Number 2 is to approve the December 2019 Secretary Treasurer's report. The 3 are to approve the budget transfers. Number 4 is to acknowledge the audit and to approve and resolve the corrective action, which we talked about. Number 5 is to approve paying our attorney a record for 2020. And number 6 is we're buying a new truck to replace a manual vehicle. And number 7 is to approve our tax shelter annuity company.
So, motion to approve numbers 1 through 7?
Question on that.
Okay.
The buses, we had gotten notice that there's 2 buses out and another 2 are gonna go out. Are we applying for the buses?
Now, 2 of them have already been replaced. The other 2 will be in next year's budget for
Okay.
2021. As you know, buses only have a 15-year life.
Right.
We cannot keep them on. We have to take them off the road, no matter how functional they are. So 2 of them are nearing the end of their lives this year, at 15-year. So
And then the next year, the other 2?
Yep.
no, the other 2 have already been
You got
replaced.
them, okay.
In fact, if you remember, a few months ago, there was a motion to allow the administration to put those buses out for auction, and that still hasn't happened yet. We're working in conjunction with the borough, because they do that with trucks and police cars fairly frequently, so we're going to kind of piggyback off them, but they haven't done one since. So,
Other questions or comments? Dr. C?
There's a car. very
There's a car
close to the
came
door.
close to the door.
Can I just ask you one question? On number 6, we're getting a Ford truck from Morristown. Did we put
It's-
that out to bid or?
it's a state contract, so it's already been out to bid.
Oh.
So we can just pick what we can just select what options we want,
Oh.
Why would we get it from Morristown and not local?
because it's that dealer that has the state
that
contract.
dealer has the
so-
contract.
Other questions?
Number 7, it says for the school year, so we approve that every beginning of school year, or?
Yeah,
We're halfway through now.
the tax sheltered annuity company?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have that on the, June, we do the reorganization meeting where we have to re-up everything. That's always in there, so we'll add this to that list for each one.
There's a new one that came forward and made a presentation, right? And it just offers the employees another option.
So, Mr. Hurley, Mr. Kelly, and I, before the last meeting, we were talking about the order of making motions versus discussion. I think where we landed was, after you read the numbers, make a motion, second the motion, then discussion, hearing nothing else, vote. Does that sound good? Okay,
Sounds good.
Kevin gave us a chart,
We don't need a chart.
got it.
so make a motion.
Multicolored?
Okay,
I'd like to make a motion to approve numbers 1 through 7.
all right, second? All right, Mr. Mazzone. Any final discussion? Hearing none, take roll. Mr. Kelly?
Mrs. Ahmed,
Yes.
Mr. Healy,
Yes.
Mrs. Jones,
Yes.
Mrs. Abrera,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzone,
Yes.
Dr. Racine,
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry,
Yes.
Dr. Oladi.
Yes.
Motion's carried. Thank you.
Okay, policy, Ms. Librera.
There are no motions tonight, and we haven't had a meeting since the last meeting.
Okay, thank you. Buildings and grounds, Mr. Healy.
Yeah, we did not have a committee meeting since our last board meeting, but we are scheduled for February 10th, and there are no resolutions for tonight.
Okay. Old business? Any old business? Ms. Jones?
I'd just like to mention that I did go to the Promoting Literacy at Home, which is on the schedule that we just received tonight. Mr. Fagenbach, who used to be a kindergarten teacher and is now the librarian at Washington and Lincoln, and he's very, very good there and very happy, and the kids really enjoy him. But it was excellent, and he gave some websites for parents to check on if they would like to foster additional excitement over reading at home. And then one other thing, because it was a 6 o'clock swim meet, I got a chance to see the pool, and again, Michael Rosara there. It was really wonderful. They painted it. It really looks beautiful, and he's so excited about what the Rutherford Swim Association is going to do with doing the pavement around the pool, and so I'm really glad I got the opportunity to go. That's all.
Yeah, it does look a lot nicer.
Yeah, I was at the Boy Scouts swim thing with him, and he saw me there, and he was very appreciative that I showed up, and we spent about 45 minutes, and if you get to talk to Mike, and you go through the area with him, he's really, really excited about it, and but I mean, in detail about what he's done, and it's just tremendous, and we had kids going there from the mommy meet, and you could not see the bottom of the pool. I mean, there's so much difference in there, and the excitement he has. It's actually cooled off. You can actually stand in there and breathe without being, chlorinated to death. But one of the things I do want to do is I'm going to go out and I want to, make a comment to him publicly, Alan Rose from the Swim Association, for what he's done in there and the energy that he has to get more people in there, because I think it's a tremendous job.
It's really good.
Yeah, excellent.
Just want to second on the Parent Academy. I've been to one, I was to a few. They are excellent. You should get a chance, definitely go. And also, part of my liaison, at the council meeting, some of our art teacher from Union School and some of the kids were recognized as Peace Poster Contest winners. So that was nice.
Any other old business? Okay, we're going to move on to legislative updates. So Mr. Conti's not here, so I asked Ms. Jones, who's the legislative alternate, or
And I got
Mr.
one
Early?
thing I'll add.
So, Ms.
I got
Jones,
one thing, if you want to, do you have something to
Yes,
say?
I
have one thing.
The New Jersey School Board Association expressed disappointment in Governor Murphy's misinterpretation and veto of the legislation of S-49, that's Senate 4989, that could have helped some school districts facing reductions in state aid to education. This bill would have allowed limited adjustments to the 2% tax levy. But the NJSBA took issue with the governor linking the cap relief bill to his proposed millionaire's tax. In a statement accompanying his veto of the bill, Governor Murphy said that instead of allowing the cap adjustment, the state's priority should be the enactment of the millionaire's tax. Now, Dr. Feinstein is the director of New Jersey School Boards, and he stated the millionaire's tax and property tax cap adjustment are completely unrelated. Under the state school funding law, any additional revenue generated by the millionaire's tax could not be used to provide additional funds to districts that will be losing school aid. So that was disappointing, because that's been in the mill for over a year, and that would have helped a lot of districts. And the only other one that I found, because I'm always interested in this, is the school security audits. This is Assembly Bill 4147 and the Senate Bill 2744, requires school districts to conduct an audit of the security features of district buildings and grounds and communication system using a standardized checklist, and to submit the audit to the New Jersey Office of Homeland Security and Preparedness, and also the New Jersey Department of Education. The audits are kept confidential and not be deemed public records under the Open Public Records Act. The audit shows, however, may be used for the purpose of allocating any state grants and loans made available for the purpose of school safety and security upgrades. And this law goes through in September of the school year 2021. So that's something that, I don't know if we would qualify, but school security is of utmost importance. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones.
One update of something that I think I talked about at the last meeting, a bill that made it to the governor's desk on requiring grades 7 to 12 to provide depression and anxiety screening every year. The governor pocket vetoed that, which means it's not dead, but it has to go back and be rewritten. So the future of that bill remains to be seen, whether or not it makes its way back to it again. Some concerns about, there's, as I mentioned, there's some pros and cons there, addressing a problem, but again, the putting on the schools the responsibilities, and depression is not something either that, you just can't do a screening in September and say, he's good now for the year, and, the way we here monitor and work with kids and our counselors is an ongoing process. It's not an initial screening. So anyway, the governor did pocket veto that, so that's not going to happen anytime soon. And, one of the things to be cautious of with the state, the Commissioner of Education visited Bergen County today. I was able to hear him speak at our monthly superintendent's meeting, and he was talking about very, very briefly and not much detail about school funding. But keep in mind, a lot of that push for additional funding was where there was exorbitant amount of funding going while other districts are being grossly underfunded. And there's been a gradual attempt to follow the actual formula, which would not allow everybody to be underfunded, right? So, I'm not so sure what was in that bill particularly, but it might have been to restore, a lot of it might have been to restore the disproportionate funds. They lost it, but the question is, should they have gotten them in the first place? So there was a lot back and forth on that, which remains to be seen. That's it. That's all I have for legislative.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hurley. Okay, at 9:10 p.m., we are going to open up the meeting to the public for any item, agenda or non-agenda related. All right, hearing no comments at 9:10 p.m., we are going to close the meeting. And I believe there is a need for an executive session.
We have 6 very brief student issues and 1 contractual update.
Okay. Any action to be taken?
Nope.
No? About how long will we be at?
15 minutes.
Okay. Could I get a motion to go into executive session? Dr. Racine, can I get a second? Mr. Mazzone, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Abstentions? We're in executive session.